Good to see you. Great show as always. Welcome to Hannity Tonight. Major breaking news, multiple fronts in just a few hours from now. Bruce Ohr, the twice demoted corrupt DOJ official at the very center of the deep state's effort to stop Donald Trump, is set to testify before Congress. Coming up, we will detail how Ohr became a seedy central figure in what is the Destroy Trump movement. Plus, we have breaking news tonight, a new report from Sarah Carter showing how a government whistleblower allegedly punished after sounding the alarm on a strange $1 million contract given to a key player in the government's effort to surveil the Trump administration. This will blow you away. And also tonight, there's a new scary list circulating on Capitol Hill. It previews the Democrats' shocking post-election agenda. None of it is to help you. We have it. We'll share it with you. 71 days to go until the most important midterm election in our lifetime. It should serve as a warning to everybody. Protect what you voted for in 2016. And good news from the international front. The U.S. and Mexico have agreed to a strong new trade deal. What happened to the trade war? Meanwhile, the stock market is surging. The president's poll numbers remain steady despite last week's media hysterical breakdown. We're bringing all of that. Plus, we will honor the life of an American patriot. He was a hero. He served his country. John McCain with his longtime friend and colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham. Sit tight, buckle up. We start with our breaking news opening monologue. He was once the fourth highest ranking official in the Justice Department. An Associate Deputy Attorney General, Bruce Ohr, cultivated a close relationship with former Clinton paid-for foreign spy, dirty dossier author, he doesn't even believe the dossier himself, Christopher Steele. And allegedly, without the permission or knowledge of then-boss, Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, Ohr and Steele maintained a close relationship and contacts both before, during, and after the 2016 election. 2 weeks ago, right here on this show, we first showed you dozens of unearthed texts and emails and handwritten notes that detailed specifically how Ohr and Steele worked together to spread the dirty dossier throughout some of the highest levels of our government, and to also spread lies, propaganda, disinformation to you, the American people, so you would vote for one person over another before the election in 2016. This contact between Steele and Ohr continued even after the FBI cut all official ties with Christopher Steele because he was leaking to the press information he knew was not true. And of course, Bruce Ohr knew that the dossier was in fact bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. He knew that Steele was doing Clinton's bidding as an opposition researcher for the group Fusion GPS with that funneled money through a law firm. He likely knew that the contents of the dossier were unverified at best. Now debunked most of it. Now, after all, Bruce Ohr's wife, Nellie Ohr, she worked with Christopher Steele at Fusion GPS, a massive detail that Bruce Ohr failed to report to the Justice Department he worked for, while some of his colleagues used the contents of Clinton's dirty dossier as the basis for criminal investigations and, of course, lying in FISA court applications. Now, the Ohr-Steele relationship was so seedy that in 2017, Christopher Steele expressed his concern over James Comey's upcoming testimony, writing to Bruce Ohr, "Hi, just wondering if you had any news. Obviously, we're a bit apprehensive given scheduled appearance at Congress on Monday," that would be Comey's, "hoping that important firewalls, plural, will hold. Thanks. Many thanks." Now, meanwhile, according to Bruce Ohr's handwritten memos, Christopher Steele was, quote, very concerned about the Comey hearing and afraid they will be exposed. And other communications show Steele's efforts to reach the special counsel investigation, including Robert Mueller. In November 2017, Ohr wrote to Steele, quote, "I have passed on the questions, apparently to the special counsel Mueller, but haven't gotten an answer yet." So Ohr was actually feeding Steele's Russian lies to Bob Mueller and his Democratic donor witch hunters. And Steele later wrote back, quote, "I'm presuming you've heard nothing back from your SC special counsel colleagues on the issues you have kindly put forward in front of me. To say this is a disappointment is an understatement." So tomorrow's a big day. You, the American people, finally deserve answers. And during this hearing before Congress, Orr will appear before the House Judiciary and House Government Reform and Oversight Committees. It is important we get answers. These are just a few of the questions. What did Steele mean when he said, quote, hoping important firewalls will hold? What are those firewalls? Why was Steele worried about, quote, being exposed? Who in the DOJ knew that Steele was feeding information to Orr? Was Bruce Orr really working on the Russia probe without the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein's permission or knowledge? Remember, Rosenstein signed off on the fourth FISA warrant. We knew by then the bulk of information was the phony Clinton bought and paid for dossier. Who in the special counsel investigation did Orr pass along Steele's issues to? And this is important. Did any FISA applications contain information from Orr's work with Christopher Steele? Was he working hand in hand with his wife, her employer, Fusion GPS? And what role did Nellie Orr play in this phony Russian dossier? Now, these questions are just the tip of the iceberg. New article in The Federalist outlines several important topics that also must be addressed. I know this has nothing to do with taxi medallions or bank loans or tax returns, but we'll update you on this real case of collusion tomorrow after the hearing. Now, also tonight, we have another breaking report that exposes potential corruption, again at the highest levels of your government. According to Sarah Carter, this is an interesting story. A defense analyst named Adam Lovinger was targeted and stripped, his security clearance gone. Why? Because he exposed what is a bizarre and strange $1 million contract between the Department of Defense and Stefan Halper. Now, who's Stefan Halper? You might remember Halper. He was the guy that the FBI used as the undercover, important, otherwise known as spy against the Trump campaign in the lead up to the 2016 election. It gets deeper. And according to Sarah Carter, and she'll join us in a minute, Lovinger raised concerns over Halper's diplomatic meetings with foreigners. And by the way, including Russians, something not allowed in his role as a contractor. We did reach out to Halper, the Department of Defense tonight. They haven't responded. Shocking. Now, we'll talk to Sarah Carter and Lovinger's attorney, Sean Bigley. They'll join us with more on this developing story. But first, we are currently tracking another huge developing story that could spell very bad news for Robert Mueller tonight. A federal court case stemming from a decades-old murder. They're actually set to decide whether or not information from grand jury investigations can actually be released to the public. Now, if the court finds that such information cannot be made public, that would mean Robert Mueller could be muzzled and prevented from releasing a report at the conclusion of his witch hunt when he writes a stupid report. Usually grand jury information is kept secret. And remember, only prosecutors get to make the case to a grand jury. In other words, there's no defense case before a grand jury. In America, you can't indict a ham sandwich. We're going to keep you posted on this case as arguments are set to begin next month. And meanwhile, we have yet another setback for anyone breathlessly hoping and praying for Mueller to find the Trump-Russia collusion that we've not heard to this point. The attorney for Michael Cohen, our old friend Lanny Davis, well, he's now backpedaling on his claim that Donald Trump knew about the now infamous 2016 Trump Tower meeting. This is a big deal. And Davis is now saying that he should have been clear, and now he cannot confirm that information that he had once confirmed. And CNN fake news reported. This raises another important question. Is Michael Cohen really being served well in this case by his attorney, lifelong Clinton ally, politically motivated against the president? Remember, it was Lanny Davis who said his client would never accept a pardon from President Trump. Okay, he'd rather serve 5 years in prison? That really was a bad thing for any attorney to say. We'll have more on that in a moment. But first, we're going to turn to the midterm elections. 71 days from tonight. You'll be tuned in. You'll be watching election results. You will decide. The power is in your hands, the future of this country. For months, we have been warning you about the Democratic post-election agenda. If they take back the House, they're coming for, they call it crumbs, the tax cut, but they still want the crumbs back. They said they will rescind President Trump's tax cuts. We know, and I've been saying forever, their number one goal, they won't tell you, but they want to impeach this president. How does Obamacare work out for you? Did you get to keep your doctor plan and pay less? They want to keep Obamacare. They want to block Kavanaugh from the U.S. Supreme Court. They want open borders. They want to abolish ICE. They want to kill off the deep state investigations and abuse of power that we have been exposing every night on this show. And according to a list first obtained by Axios, congressional Republicans are now previewing a series of what will be investigations that Democrats will likely launch if they regain power in the House. By the way, if you look at the list, it's interesting. That list, nothing is about making life better for you, your family, the forgotten men and women in this country. None of it. And some are calling it a hell list for President Trump and his allies should they take back power in 71 days. Look at the list. It includes inquiries into the president's tax returns, family businesses, the president's dealings with Russia, James Comey's firing. Oh, Rod Rosenstein recommended it. Stormy Daniels, the travel ban, Jared Kushner, Ivanka, ethics compliance, hurricane response in Puerto Rico, and so much more. Look, keep that list rolling. Let this be a clear warning. If you don't vote in 71 days, if you don't understand what's at stake, and Republicans lose the House, I'm telling you right now, this is not my first rodeo. We were on this show, this network, when we launched in October 1996. I promise you, this will all happen. The Trump agenda will be stalled. Anti-Trump investigations will feed into the media frenzy that we now see ratcheting up every day. That's why I keep telling you, it's the most important midterm elections in your lifetime. If you voted for Donald Trump, you like the results of Donald Trump, then you better pay attention to this November, 71 days away, because that's what they want to do, and more. Without a doubt, the Trump agenda is working. Just today, the president announced a strong new trade deal with Mexico. This is a win for this country. Take a look.
We just signed a trade agreement with Mexico, and it's a terrific agreement for everybody. It's been in the works for a long time. It's an agreement that a lot of people said couldn't be done, and we did something that was very special. Great for our farmers, our workers, and our stock market just broke 26,000 for the first time ever in the history. So today we have the highest stock price we've ever had. And we're very happy about that. I said that was going to happen, and it's happened. Everything I said is going to happen. It ends up happening.
And guess what? Following that announcement, the NASDAQ jumped to a record high as our already surging economy continues to strengthen. Good day on the Dow as well. Record low unemployment rates across the board. Let's see, 14 states, record low unemployment for Hispanic Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workforce. Youth unemployment is now at a, 40-year low. Consumer confidence at an all-time high. More jobs than we have people on unemployment available. A key reason why the president's approval rating, in spite of all of these vicious, vile, day-by-day, predictable media attacks, remains steady and strong, and subsequent impeachment obsession even after Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort last week. All right, we have a lot to get to tonight. Joining us now, the author of the New York Times 3 weeks in a row bestseller, The Russian Hoax. #1, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and also Fox News investigative reporter, contributor Sarah Carter, and security clearance defense attorney Sean Bigley is with us. Sarah, let's start with your breaking news. It gets complicated, but at the heart of it, this is a really big case because Mr. Adam Lovinger, represented by Sean, who's with us, he basically was able to expose, and now you have seen the documents that say...
Well, he was basically able to expose Stephen Halpers. And remember, Stephen Halper was a professor emeritus at Cambridge who was the central player in the FBI's Crossfire hurricane investigation into President Donald Trump. And he was the man that the Washington Post and the New York Times, when they published their stories on Crossfire hurricane, he was the person that they didn't want to out, the name that nobody wanted to reveal out of fear based on intelligence community warnings, Sean, that people could either be killed or that his life would be in danger if his name goes public. Well, eventually his name did go public, and that was Stefan Halper. And what we discovered was that he was actually involved in every aspect of the FBI's investigation.
Slow down
from
right
Carter.
there. I want you to explain why Halper is important. This is very. So we did have the case of the FISA warrants, but then we have the issue of spies in the Trump campaign. And
yes,
Stefan Halper, explain.
Yes, and Stefan Halper was prior to them taking on and asking the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court for that FISA warrant on Carter Page. He actually became acquainted with Page in July of 2016. He approached him. Page was invited to one of his Cambridge intelligence seminars, and that's where Page befriended Halper. And Halper and him became very close. And in fact, Halper was continuously asking Carter Page questions, asking him about his thoughts on Russia, asking him about this and that. And then later on in September 2000,
did the spy in the Trump campaign have connections to Russia?
Well, this is what's even more interesting. Stefan Halper has direct ties to Russian intelligence because at his Cambridge intelligence seminars, twice he invited the former head of Russian intelligence.
He invited the Russians to the seminars. He's a spy in the Trump campaign.
Absolutely.
And then Sean's client, Adam Lovinger, finds this information.
Well, accidentally stumbled on it. He was doing his job at the Pentagon. He was at Net Assessment. He was going through contracts, and he realized, hey, here's this professor who's basically getting over $1 million in contracts to write reports. I don't understand what's going on here.
$2,000 a page, your report said.
That's absolutely true.
It's a lot of money. Good work if you can get it.
Yeah, and nobody gets that money, Sean. That's almost impossible. I mean, this is something that was.
Stefan Halper is now then also, he has all his Russian contacts. He's getting paid $2,000 a page. He's working with the former CIA director of Obama, Hayden, correct?
Oh, yeah. We don't know that for sure. What we do know is that he was working with the Pentagon. There were direct links with high-level officials at the Pentagon, and that he was going overseas. He was making a lot of money, and he was conducting what appears to be diplomatic relations, which is forbidden under federal law when you're a contractor at the Pentagon. This isn't something that's part of your normal work routine. But let me bring up something really quick before you go to Sean. He is also directly connected, of course, to George Papadopoulos, and reached out to George Papadopoulos in September 2016, where he asked him, would you write a report for me? I'll pay you $3,000. Come to London. Let's talk. And then even more interestingly enough.
That sounds like poor Papadopoulos was set up.
Yes, that's exactly what Simona Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos' wife, has said over and over again in interviews, saying that George was basically set up by Stefan Halper and another professor by the name of Joseph Misfud.
Part two is Carter Page in this story.
Yes, and so Carter Page, who develops a very close relationship with Stefan Halper, continues to email him, and according to the sources that we've spoken with and according to the reports written in the Washington Post and the New York Times, Stefan Halper was reporting back to the FBI information. But what really quick, he also goes back to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and I don't want people to forget about this. In 2014, when Flynn was at one of these seminars and attended a dinner one night, it was Stefan Halper who not only invited Flynn, but also invited a Russian woman, but Lakova, and I hope I'm saying her name correctly, and it was Stefan Halper who allegedly spread the rumor, the disinformation campaign, that apparently Flynn had some kind of bizarre contact with her during that dinner.
Let me bring in Sean. Your client, Adam Lovinger, stumbles across this information. And by the way, Sarah, I know you've seen it. Sean, I know you've seen it. And that Stefan Halper is the nexus that drags in Papadopoulos, Carter Page, and General Flynn. And he's a spy, and literally a spy within the Trump campaign?
Sean, this is unbelievable. It's an absolute bombshell. And I will tell you this, what we have essentially learned is that Stefan Halper invited the Trump campaign officials into the Lion's Den. This was not a set of organic meetings. This was not Halper reporting things that he's witnessed that he thought were concerning, as he has put out there in the media.
You have documentary evidence.
We have an absolute ironclad document trail that shows that Halper invited the Russians, Halper foisted the Russians on the Trump officials at these meetings and at these seminars.
So the spy that's looking for Russians is the one bringing the Russians into the campaign? and surrounding all the
Absolutely.
people that have now gotten in legal trouble with Russians, the guy that the government put there. Is that a fair statement?
This is a classic. Absolutely, Sean. This is a classic espionage tactic. You accuse the other side of doing what you are, in fact, doing, and that is the entire genesis of the Mueller investigation.
Has anybody like
Mr.
Jeff
Halper,
Sessions or anybody asked for this material?
This is breaking. This is today, Sean. This is brand new bombshell
maybe
material.
Maybe they could watch our show and learn something. We found a lot of Russian connections. Hillary paying for Russian lies being spread as propaganda to the American people, Russian lies being used for FISA warrants. There's a lot of Russia here that have nothing to do with bank loan applications, tax returns, or taxi medallions. Greg Jarrett,
but they appear to have. But they appear to have everything to do with the other side, Sean.
That's correct.
There's no question, but that there was a conspiracy afoot here, and that was to use people to insinuate themselves into the Trump campaign as spies, and in order to set up individuals as scapegoats, essentially, for the Trump-Russia collusion probe. You know, and the FBI is all in on this. They're paying for this.
Is this the insurance policy?
Oh, sure.
Is this where the firewall's holding? We don't want to be exposed. Right. Does that all come together?
Papadopoulos bar talk was never the precipitous moment for triggering the campaign, the election. It was the dossier, and the dossier was fabricated by a British spy being paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. Where is Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein investigating that, which is clearly illegal?
And these, Sean Bigley, these documents will prove as such, correct?
Absolutely. Let me tell you briefly what they show. Number one, Stefan Halper co-led his series of seminars with a noted Putin apologist who spent a decade at the State Academy in Russia. Number two, Stefan Halper co-taught these seminars at Cambridge University with the former head of Russian intelligence. And number three, and perhaps most damning, Stefan Halper accepted funds from a front company for the Russian intelligence service, or what MI6 believes to be a front company for the Russian intelligence service.
And he was the spy that was used to try and fight. Everything is boomeranged. I said this year's the year of the boomerang. I hope your client. This is going to be interesting. Let's see if Robert Mueller pays a little attention to something Russia. You know, maybe instead of bot companies and people he's never going to get in a courtroom, maybe he could pay attention now if he cares about truth and real Russia collusion. All right, we'll follow the story. Thank you all for being with us. Congrats on the book, Greg. Sarah, great report. SarahACarter.com, Hannity.com if you want to read the whole report. By the way, it's long, but it's worth the read. When we come back, demoted DOJ official Bruce Ohr is going to go face-to-face with lawmakers tomorrow behind closed doors. Catherine Herridge has a full report from Washington. And Alan Dershowitz, Andy McCarthy, as we continue straight ahead.